Hello, and welcome to the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. I'm Gabriel Sanders, public programs producer at the museum. And thank you so much for joining us for a screening and talkback of They Survived Together with John Rokosny and Andriette Redmann. We hope on a visit to the museum, you'll have a chance to see our core exhibition, The Holocaust, What Hate Can Do, alongside survivors, faces of life after the Holocaust, photographs by Martin Scholer. You can see our upcoming public programs on our website. I'd like to mention two events that we have coming up. One is a week from this Sunday, Brundabar will be performed by the Young People's Chorus of New York. That's Sunday the 29th at 3 p.m. And on February 2nd, we will have a book premiere of Morgenthau, Power, Privilege, The Rise of an American Dynasty. And February 16th, I also just want to mention, we'll have a special live event, February 12th, special live event with Bernard Henri Levy and Natan Sharansky. I never like to say too much about a film before seeing it, because we'll have a chance to discuss it with the creative team. But the Neiger family was living a peaceful life in the Jewish community of Krakow when the arrival of World War II changed their lives forever. Their story is told in They Survived Together, winner of Best Historical Documentary at the 2022 New York Emmys. Our screening will be followed by a discussion with John Rokosny and Andriette Redmann, the director and producer of the film. Thank you again for joining us, and we will begin the screening of They Survived Together. Soundtrack. I just want to do a quick intro of the filmmakers. John Rokosny is an Emmy Award-winning producer and director with 30 years of experience in film, television, and music. He has produced 100 episodes of the TV series Quiet Triumphs for Hallmark and documentaries for television, The Last Poets for Bravo for Black History Month, and Seventh Inning Stretch for ESPN. Rokosny has directed hundreds of top-name stars in national public service TV and radio campaigns. And John Rokosny and Andriette Redmann began producing films and music as a team 25 years ago, including the soundtrack for They Survived Together, which features music by Grammy-winning composer Frank London of the Klezmatics, and the Jewish lullaby Derme by Andriette's group Avon Fair. Together, they've produced dozens of fundraising films for charities, including music legend Paul Simon's Children's Health Fund, Ronald McDonald House Charities, and many others, and their films have screened all over. Can we give it up one more time for John Rokosny and Andriette Redmann?
It sounds exhausting.
Patty Schulman, the editor, was not here, so we saved that bio. I wanted to start with where this story began. How did you meet the Neiger family? What was the impetus to create this film?
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you to Gabriel and the museum for having us, and everybody who came out today. I know the weather was a little rough, but we really appreciate each and every one of you coming here tonight, and everybody who's watching online. My sister told me there's a lot of people from around the world watching online, so hello out there. And thanks to the tech crew. They did a great job. They were battling a little problem with the projector, but they were really on top of things, so we really appreciate that. To your question, how we met the Neiger family, Andriette and I had been living in the East Village most of our adult life, and we were regulars at a cafe called Angelina Cafe on Avenue A. And it was the kind of place where there was a lot of regulars, everybody knew each other. You would run into friends there, you would have impromptu dinners. Hey, can we join you? Yes. And there was an elderly woman there who we would see periodically, and we'd say hello to, and wave from across the room. And one night we were both leaving at the same time, so I introduced myself, and she said, my name's Hanka, and I said, I noticed you have an Eastern European accent. Where are you from? And she said, I'm from Poland. And I said, oh, you're Polish. And she said, no, I'm not Polish, I'm Jewish. And I said, okay, I won't make that mistake again. And she we kept meeting her, and one day we were there, and she said, I have a children's book that I'd like you to read. And I said, sure, bring it in. I'll buy a copy of it. Sounds great, And this kind of went on for a while. We kept seeing each other. She kept saying, you got to read my book. And
we started having dinners together, and she'd say, when are you coming over?
Yeah, and so we were like, we'd become friends with her, but we never got the book. And one night she came in, we were sitting there having dinner. She said, I'm going to sit down here until you're finished dinner, and when you're done, you're going to come over to my apartment and you're going to read my book. So we went over to her apartment. She handed us a copy, both of us a copy of The Red Hat, and we both sat down and read it, and
we were shocked. We were amazed by the story. Our mouths dropped open, and we're like, how did this story never get told?
And we were blown away. I mean, halfway through the book, I had this revelation, or just this impulse. I said, I gotta make this movie. And I really could see it. Even reading half of the book, I could see the whole thing down the line. I thought, this is the most incredible story. We've got to do this. And it was really, for one of the first times in my life where I had the vision that I could see it all the way to the end. And
that leads me to my next question. The red hat that she's wearing throughout the film is such a huge thread in the film. And it reminded me of, a well-known film about the Holocaust, of course, Schindler's List, where there's one burst of red color in that film. But here, the red hat, we see at the end that it's based on it. I'm wondering how much of the film did you find as you were interviewing the subjects, and you did it so that you were interviewing each person for them to tell their story and weave it into a collective whole, and then how much of it was informed by the Red Hat and Hanka story?
The Red Hat was, the introduction. The Red Hat was, what we went off of first. I mean, I read the book many times. I even made a little short film, recorded a voiceover, used all the illustrations in the book, just did the book as a little film. And we started we set up an interview with Hanka, and we interviewed her. The first interview we did, we interviewed her for about 4 hours. And Andriette does all the interviewing. She really makes the subject feel very comfortable. And I'm listening in the headphones, and I'm like, this is beyond the book now. This is just from her first person perspective. And I'm listening, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is just incredible. I mean, from a filmmaker's point of view, I'm like, this is gold, But from a human standpoint, it was heartbreaking, and she would, often break into tears, and it was really, really tough, and so.
It was like a gift was being given, and the more she would reveal, the more of a gift was given, and And we both felt very honored to be trusted. And then as we got to know each sibling over time and they revealed their stories, it was more gift being given.
Yeah, the next interview we did was with Benjamin. And again, the first interview we did with him lasted for about 4 hours. And, which is a long time. From an interviewer's point of view, it's a long time. But I mean, he started talking before I even started the camera. So the first reel of his interview is like he's in the mid-story. We were so fortunate that they were so ready to tell this story. I think they've been waiting their lifetime to tell this story, and they were such great people. We became friends with them. We started to, next we interviewed Tosha, and Basha was a little resistant at first. She said she didn't want to be a part of it. So we were like, okay, fine, and then we were invited to a birthday party at the same cafe, Angelina Cafe, for Hanka, and Basha was there, and we became friendly with her, and that was it. 2 months later, I'm sitting in Angelina Cafe, and Basha calls me up, and I said hello, and she said, "Why should I do your film?" And I said, well, well, I guess it'd be a good thing to pass down to your son and to your grandchild. And she said, "Good answer, I'll do it." So we were fortunate to get her, and then we started to just get invited to the family parties, the family seders, the Hanukkah celebrations, the bat mitzvahs. We were just engrossed in the family. We had many meals together, constantly going out for lunch together. One of them would call up and say, "Meet us uptown at the diner." We always went to the same diner uptown. And we'd go there, and then they'd all be there, right? Like all the siblings were there. Like, how often do you people get together with your siblings, right?
And this included the
Once
oldest.
a year. I mean, this was constantly. They were always there. And Ben, every single time, would get the check.
And Sasha with her wheelchair.
Oh, and then we'd go over, after we had lunch, we'd go over to the nursing home where Sesha was, and we'd go hang out with her, and then we'd bring her back, and she'd have a meal. It was just unbelievable how close they were,
Yeah.
as a family.
And I think, we're very glad you were able, they told the story, you were able to make the film, and seems became a part of the family. I was struck at the end when you bring them all together and they say there's so much, they've been through the worst. Now there's lots to celebrate and be together, and that really bound them as a family. And also a very important part of the film is when Ben gets separated from the family, and that's a really important piece of the family tie and dynamic of this family who survives together when that is not the typical story of the Holocaust. So I am interested, I thought you handled it very respectfully, and it was interesting that you interviewed each subject individually, and ultimately we see the family together. I think from a filmmaking perspective, it was effective. Was that your goal, your initial plan to do it that way, as opposed to interviewing people together? I think it made sense for us to hear each story. Just wondering about the process and the decision to interview each person on their own.
Well, when we interviewed all of them at that table that you see them at the end, I knew that would be the ending. I knew that would be where we would build to, and we did a lot of other interviews. We did combinations. We did 3s and 4s and 2s, and but it really worked out to do it to have them tell it individually. Those were sort of the best interviews as far as being a linear story. Of course, when we were interviewing Ben, Honker was in the kitchen and she was yelling, "That's not how it went," and they had a lot of fun sibling, back and forth, and so yeah, it's just it was a choice to structure the film that way.
Andriette, do you want to tell us on the producing side how, knowing now that you were the one doing those interviews, I'm sure that was both very wonderful to do and also challenging. So on a producing side, how this film came together, and then also if you have anything to add, I know because Patty Schumann couldn't be here, on the editing of making this film and being able to see the version that we saw, which is slightly different than the other. And I'm very glad we got to see this version.
Yeah, it was, as I said before, it was like a real treasure to get to know this family and to hear their stories and to have them trust in us, that we wanted to hear what they had to say and that we would be faithful to their story. And as far as Patty Schumann goes, it was just a wonderful opportunity that she happened to be available at that time. She has worked with Oprah Winfrey with the Masterclass. She's done editing there, and she runs the Yonkers Film Festival with her husband, Dave Steck. Dave Steck did a lot of those effects like the snow falling or the smoke coming up out of the cigarette and the book, the way the book opens, so he helped too. But Patty was passionate about this story. Like as soon as she saw it, she was just so impassioned by it. So that was a huge gift as well. Because John had set it up, the first setup, and then she took it and ran with it.
Yeah, it was a real blessing to have her come on board because she really did take charge. And I think editors really don't get enough credit in general. And certainly with Patty, she was just tenacious. And every day I'd get a new rough cut. I'd watch it, while I was going to bed at night. In the morning, I'd give her my notes, and we did that through COVID. So it was really, COVID really, gave us the opportunity to finish the editing because we could do it remotely and just go back and forth, whether it was on a Zoom call or just sending back and forth the draft. So yeah, but we were very, very lucky to get Patty. I've known Patty since I was 15 years old.
Oh, cool.
So.
I'm always interested, when did you initially meet the family? And films they can take a very long time to finish, and I'm sure you were tenacious too to get this accomplished. How long were you working on this film from beginning until now? And I don't know the exact release date.
The film aired on December, first aired on December 6th, 2021 on PBS. We had finished it that fall, sent it to PBS, and they said yes, but we need a 58-minute version. So we basically had spent 2 years editing this version, and then in a month we had to edit a 58-minute version. So that was kind of a scramble. Really, the project took off, I think, and I consider when Patty jumped on board, which was 2018, is when we, really got started. But it took us a long time to get to know the family. That process was over a couple of years to get the trust of the family.
I'm wondering about the score and working with Frank London. I think the initial music you hear in the film really is unique and sets the tone for the film. It was different than music I've heard in other films. So I'm wondering about the process of working with Frank to develop this score, which really does a lot for the film.
Another incredible, lucky break for us to get Frank London. I had actually asked a friend of ours, Tony Jabal, if he wanted to do the music. And in one of the most unselfish moves in show business history, he said, yes, I'd love to, but you should really get Frank London. And I said, great, I don't know Frank London. He goes, well, I do. And he gave me his number. We met in a cafe in the East Village. I told Frank what I was hearing. We went back home. That afternoon, Frank had sent me some demos of some of this music, and it was like, that is perfect. So it was a real treat to work with Frank and to work with all the classical musicians, something that we hadn't really experienced in our lives before, and recording with Frank. We just let him go, and he is just a genius. So we were very fortunate to have Frank. It was a real lucky break for us.
Yeah, it was magical, and John suggested the type of music that he heard from based on other films that he'd seen and the mood that he wanted, and Frank just picked it up right away and ran with it, and it was great. And the music team was really great. We have one of the singers in the back there, and then one of our graphic people
Yes, all the maps you saw on the back were done by Jeff Green. Jeff, stand up and say a few words. And Kath Green also sang with Andriette on the Dorme Dorme. Anybody else in the crew here? Frank, Tom? Nope. Okay.
Well, and I know Dan is here, who helped us with get the film so we could show it.
Yes, Dan Gerlitz, our rep, is here. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you all for joining us. I'm wondering how this work fits in with the rest of the work you've done. Does it have a more special place than the work? Maybe I know you've had a long career in film and TV, and I know from talking to Andriette that you're working on another film now that's also about the Holocaust.
This film is the first time I felt so driven and so connected to a project. We'd been working with nonprofits and charities and cause-related films for many years since the beginning started. So we always had incredible, wonderful subjects that we worked with that were helping people and fundraising for charities. So it's always been cause-related stuff. But this film really put me into a whole other frame of involvement.
And my last question, and then we'll open it up to audience Q&A. And if you have a question from the live stream, we'll try to answer those as well. This film won the Best Historical Documentary at the New York Emmys. I'm wondering what that meant to you to receive that award.
Well, every step of the way of this film, there was great. We were honored to do this film. We were blessed by the people we met, by the team we got to work with. And it's weird, as soon as we finished the film, things just sort of took off much faster than we expected with PBS, with getting the distribution deal through Dan, and then getting nominated for an Emmy. We were kind of in shock. And I said to Andriette, if we don't win the Emmy, I'm gonna be kind of mad for a few days, honestly. And at the ceremony, our category was way at the end of the night, and so we were sitting there for hours, and at the table we were sitting at, everybody was winning an Emmy, and we were coming back from the stage with their Emmys, and we were just sitting there Jesus Christ, if we're gonna lose this. And also it was the 20th anniversary of 9/11, so there was 9/11 films in every category. and they were all winning, right? And we had 2 9/11 films in our category. Somebody texted me, 9/11 versus the Holocaust, you know, and you know, I thought, oh, this is a 9/11 sweep, we're never gonna do it. And they called our name, and we were both in shock, really. And I had written a speech, it went out the window, and but it was really the icing on the cake. It was a great experience. I got to be honest, winning is good. But knowing the Neiger family was better.
And well, here at the museum, it's really wonderful for us to be able to present films with New York filmmakers about New York people, New York survivors. So we're very thrilled that we were able to show this film tonight. We'll open it up now to the audience for questions. We have a mic over here. Here's our first one.
I'd just like to say one more thing before we open it up.
Absolutely.
We received some very sad news this week. Benjamin Neiger, the older brother, passed away. And so we'd like to dedicate this night to Ben. He was a fatherly uncle figure to us, and we really loved him dearly. And we had many, many great times with him.
Yeah, he was funny and vibrant and so present with you, made you feel like you were the coolest person in the world when he was with you. And
he was really the coolest person.
He was the one who was cool. Yep.
Thank you so much, for sharing that. And another impactful part of the film is at the end we do see who has passed, and I know the film is dedicated to all of them. Why don't we take our first question?
Thank you so much. That was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I had like 2 quick questions. One is, are you an Oscar contender for this? And secondly, with the Ukrainian and all the anti-Semitism that is growing and globally, just all over, there's intolerance. How do you want to harness this piece of yours to help the current times that we're facing? Like what are you going to do for your trajectory with this? Because it's at a special time right now, an unfortunate time.
Yeah. Regarding the Ukraine, when that hit, and I watched this film again after that started, this film hit me so much harder, and because we're seeing it again, and we're seeing these people suffering. What we can do is we can keep making films about the Holocaust, which we are doing. We are going to keep promoting this film every day. We are on a mission to show it to as many people as we can, to get it into schools, libraries, Jewish institutions, anywhere we can. We are pushing this to, because it's said a lot, but we really, really cannot forget what happened. And because, as we see, it can happen again.
And are you an Oscar contender?
I'm always an Oscar contender.
The contender.
I think we have a question on the other side.
Thank you very much. This was a terrific film. And I hope it gets wide play. Even beyond the PBS program itself. I've got 2 questions. I recently read the book by Tim Snyder, The Black Earth, and in it gives a different perspective of what was going on in the various parts of Eastern Europe, and it emphasized how large a risk people took who were helping people like this family. And I was wondering if you had the opportunity to explore any further on that end of things with the football club people, the farmer, anyone who helped them to survive, because the risk to them was enormous. And secondly, in the latter stages, with the family's decision, you opened by saying that she introduced herself as saying she was Jewish, not Polish. Obviously, they cannot forgive what the Polish people as a group large had done. At what point was the decision made not to return to Poland after the war and come to the United States? And I was hoping to see maybe a little of that in the film as well.
Yeah, we decided to keep the film just sort of in the war, and also, show what life was before the war, the escape, and then the psychological effects afterwards. We didn't really branch out. Yes, so getting back to the first question, it was incredible how many people helped them and risked their lives all along the way, It was amazing. It was a miracle after miracle of people, taking them in, risking their lives, getting them papers, lying for them, do whatever they could. So there's a lot of people out there that did that for a lot of other people. I should mention this before I forget, that the Neiger family is the only family to have escaped and survived as an intact family with small children. Small children were murdered quickly, so it was a miracle for them the mother was very crafty in keeping them alive, and the father, all throughout their time in the ghetto, to be able to be still alive to escape. Second part of your question.
They actually went back to Germany, or they went to Germany to get a free education because the government was giving them places to live in education. So they did get educated, except Ben, who ended up in Israel and did eventually become literate, but it took him a while, and he ended up inventing things for NASA and missile guide systems and what are the other things?
Ben was illiterate till he was like 20 years old, and then his sisters made him go to school, and he ended up in engineering school, and he worked for Siemens. He invented the dimmer switch, the light sensor, and you walk past the light outside that goes on. That's Ben. And the rocket guiding to help the rockets go to the moon. This is a guy who was illiterate till he was 20. The question was,
I think.
Oh yes, so they didn't go. Yeah, they did visit Poland, but they did go to Munich for their education, and then came over here one by one. Sasha came over first, became a very successful doctor, made a lot of money, and then was able to bring them each over and set them all up, and they all ended up on the east side of New York.
And they always would take their family back for visits, like their younger members, to show them where they used to live and all of that.
Anybody else?
Over here.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
I want to thank you so much for making the film. I was very, very much moved. I'm from Rwanda. I'm a survivor, so we do commemorations here in the room, here with the museum. We have a good relationship with the museum, so we appreciate them for really allowing you to come and showcase the film. I just want to thank you. That's why I just wanted to do, and also I would tell my fellow survivors and share the film with them, and because we want to make sure that what happens is not forgotten. So, and I appreciate them for sharing the story, because we want to learn from them as survivors, how we can share our stories, how we can move on with our lives, because some of our survivors in our community are not capable of moving on because of what we have experienced. So I was so moved. I'm happy I was able to come. So I just wanted to see it in person, not live streaming. So, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
We're glad you survived. Thank you for sharing.
So John and Andriette will be outside they have DVDs. I believe it's the director's cut too.
And bonus scenes.
Oh, yeah,
Bonus.
They're good.
Awesome. And so we'll be going there right after this. Just want to thank everyone so much for joining us in person and via live stream. As I said at the start, our upcoming programs can be found on our website, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much and have a wonderful night.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.